Hello, and thank you for joining me once again for this series I'm calling Overcoming Negative Reactions When Triggered by Your Mate. Now, if you never get triggered by your mate, then um, you wouldn't be interested in this series. Uh, this is segment 5 of case studies that I'm sharing with you in terms of the different things that pushes people's buttons in their relationships. And sometimes they sound like things that are kind of minor, but when couples get stuck in getting frustrated in either one of these areas, it is the way that they talk about it, work it through or not work it through, stay in conflict or um, dissolve it, resolve it, or manage it that makes the difference. So, for those of you who are meeting me for the very first time, I'm Melva Johnson, co-founder of the Johnson Relationship Institute for Couples. Now, I love saying co-founder because that keeps the memory of my late beloved husband alive for me in terms of all of the work that we did together, have done together for over 4 decades. And so I'm carrying on the mission. And you know what my mission is? My mission, I'm in that group of therapists and coaches who have the mission to reduce the divorce rate and increase happy, long lasting relationships and marriages that thrive. And so, over the years, in my own relationship with Jesse, um, and also in our family situation as well, I have experienced many, many ways to do that thing that I call keeping love alive and thriving together. So, this series is based on the idea it's not just marriage, it's also life. Brings out the best version and the worst version of each partner. Now, it's easy for the best version to come out when things are going well, right? It's just easy. But when our buttons get pushed, sometimes the part of us that comes out when we react by fighting, fleeing, freezing, playing dead, or hiding, or submitting, that when that version comes out, it has a powerful impact on our partner. And when in conflict, both partners are taking turns impacting the other person in a hurtful way, sometimes very scary. And I've mentioned before, and it is true that when a person is hurting, oftentimes they can become hurtful because they react from a place of vulnerability and the brain just goes into survival mode. It's like their whole body goes into survival mode. Now, it doesn't do that when a person is reflective. If they're hurting and they go into reflection, then they can respond in a different, thoughtful, maybe problem solving kind of way. But when a person is flooded with negative emotions, their brain has them focused on the other person as the enemy that they have to protect themselves from. And even though the other person could be coming from a place of a positive intention, it could be something that they say, the way that they say it, their tone of voice, their facial expressions, or their gestures that get interpreted as a threat. So, this series is to support couples to look at their situation in terms of wherever they get triggered, to look at it differently and to think about ways to respond differently that will bring them closer together on the path to that lasting love and um, know that they'll have a choice, that they can go down the road most traveled, meaning doing what they do now that keeps them stuck and disconnected, or go down the road less traveled, and that is going into a reflective state and figuring out how to have the conversation to turn things around. So first, so the first time I talked about what happens when you get triggered when your partner doesn't listen to you. Second one was when you feel criticized by your mate. The third one was uh, how do you react when your boundaries are ignored. And last time I talked about what happens when there's financial stress. And all four times, I came up with ideas about what to do differently. So this time, this fifth segment is about a couple struggling with clutter and neatness. Okay, so in these case studies that I'm presenting to you each time, and I do have some more to present in the future, I'm going to be peeling away layers of, in this case, the unspoken issue that couples who have this issue, their differing attitudes toward order and cleanliness in their shared spaces. You know, as people go into their relationships, you know, sometimes if both of them are neat, no problem. If both of them are, let's say, relaxed, no problem. But if one person needs neatness and order more than the other person, it could be a problem. Like with this couple, so this case study is Peter and Patricia. And if there's a Peter and Patricia listening, I'm not talking about you. Um, I haven't met you. So this case study is about this couple representing those couples who are struggling with this issue. So Peter's pretty relaxed about order. As a matter of fact, he's very relaxed. And Patricia is, we could say, I'm not going to say rigid, but she's very clear about how she needs order in the home. I mean, and when she brings it up, because she gets triggered when Peter leaves things on the table, clothes on the floor, towels in the bathroom, and that kind of thing. When she shares her upset about it, she feels that Peter does not hear her. Now, there's a way that people present their frustration to the other person, and sometimes it's the way that they present it that the other person can't hear them. That happens in a lot of situations. So as a result of it, and I think it's because of the presentation, Peter feels judged. I mean, because she does present it in a way that she criticizes him, and as a result, he feels judged, and so he reacts to that. In terms of what I was sharing earlier, when a person gets triggered, they go into survival mode. So that's the way that Peter goes into survival mode. So he can't hear that beneath the surface, Patricia has a positive intention. Um, she's not just looking for tidiness, she's also looking for respect for her values, and she wants harmony in the home. So that's her picture. That's been her life experience of having order in the home. She grew up with order in the home. Peter grew up with a more relaxed home atmosphere. So, can any of you relate to Peter and Patricia? And if so, how are you dealing with it? Are you working it through, or is it an argument that you have over and over and over again? Now, if you're working it through, congratulations. You could give advice to Patricia and Peter. And if you did, what advice would you give them? Any ideas? And actually, I would like for you to share your comments. Whatever platform you're watching this or listening to this on, I would like to hear your comments, because I would like for these presentations to be a conversation. I'd like to start the conversation with a particular issue that couples are struggling with. And I'd like to hear your comments in terms of your ideas about how you would approach it. Because people have a lot of wisdom, couples have a lot of wisdom. And so I'm inviting a conversation about what you would do, what advice you would give, or sharing if you dealt with it and you overcame it. So Patricia and Peter, they wanted a breakthrough. They needed a breakthrough. They loved each other, but they kept getting stuck here. This was their biggest issue. They had other irritations, but this is one that they got stuck in because every time Patricia came home and she saw the house, especially when she left it in order before she went to work, when she came home and she saw disarray anywhere in the house, it just pushed her button to no end. So what Peter and Patricia discovered, 5 things. It was important for them to figure out what kind of home environment that they wanted to have. So they needed to know the big picture so that they could see beyond their tunnel vision of getting stuck with messiness or clutter and neatness. And then they discovered that they needed to have a way to talk about it, because the way that they were talking about it now does not work, had not worked for them. I mean, talking when you're sharing your frustration with criticism and judgment, finger pointing, that kind of thing, the other person is not going to hear you. Peter couldn't hear it. And Patricia couldn't hear it when Peter was responding about his frustration and how he was impacted. The third thing that they discovered that they had to do differently was to listen. And to listen without interrupting, and to listen with curiosity. Curiosity, understanding, and empathy. Then they needed to come up with a plan and work the plan. And so they discovered that before they could make any changes, that they needed to figure out their first steps. So they did. So in terms of the 5 steps that I just mentioned, they did decide what kind of home environment they wanted. They did decide that they were going to talk to each other differently. They did decide that they were going to listen to each other with understanding. So their goal then was to bridge the gap from where they were to where they wanted to be. And so they also discovered that these steps would support them. These first steps would support them to deal with any issue that they were having. So if you were listening or watching Peter and Patricia struggle through this, I do want to hear your comments. Like I said before, I'd love to have a conversation back and forth, because again, this series is about how important it is to take the first step that leads to either dissolving the problem, resolving it, or managing it. So the bottom line is having an approach, having a way of thinking, having an action plan that determines, because the first part is individual, the first part determining what kind of person, what part of you wants to show up no matter what is going on. Like I said earlier, it's easy to show up when things are going well. It's easy to show up as your best self. It's not as easy to show up as your best self when there is a struggle or conflict or frustration or anger. So that's part 1. Part 2 is having a way to shift how a couple having a different way to communicate and connect with each other. The bigger prize is helping you to move closer together rather than distant. Remember, the goal is lasting love and thriving together. So that's food for thought for this time. I will be back very soon with the next case study, and I really would like to hear your comments, and I would like to hear your successes in terms of having an issue like this and getting on the other side. Thank you again. See you next time. Bye-bye.